What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and as you have long awaited for, it is time for my Tal'Dorei Campaign Guide Comparison video. Now, first off, right out the gate, before we dive too far into it, you can see that there is a significant difference in the size of both of these books. So I guess a little bit of background for those of you who are unaware, right? One, Tal'Dorei is the campaign setting set up by Matt Mercer of Critical Role. As you can see, it's on all of the logos and things. So this came out really during Campaign 1. This was back, God, 4, 5, maybe 5 years ago? I think 5 years ago. Maybe even more than that. I guess I could probably check the copyright date in the front cover. 2017. So yeah, 5 years ago. And it was, kind of the first Critical Role. And I mean, Critical Role was obviously very big then. It's grown exponentially since then. But this was kind of the first delving into the concept of doing, a Critical Role book. And obviously things have blown up since then. We've had one official published book in the Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, published by Wizards of the Coast. We have the Netherdeep book coming out in about 2 months from now. And basically, also I should say, this one was printed by Green Ronin Press, and this book here is printed by Darrington Press, Critical Role's own in-house publishing company. So obviously, a testament to how much growth has happened since then. So just as a quick aside here, this book is 143 pages, and our Tal'Dorei Reborn is 280. But we're going to go ahead, and I have the PDFs here so we can take a look. Now, I'm not going to go too in-depth on anything, as this is just an open comparison book. Now, we may make future videos, and I would like you guys to sound off in the comments if you're interested. By the way, if you do like any of the coverage and things I do here on the channel, please consider subscribing. We've driven this number up past 90K. I'd love it to hit 100. That being said, if you want more in-depth, specific, videos talking about like the difference between like the Cobalt Soul Monk in this book versus the Cobalt Soul Monk in this book, I can do that. And that's the thing I've done in the past a lot with Unearthed Arcana, where we do sort of side-by-sides and we see what the updates were, whether I think they were good or not, and what kind of adjustments need to be made. But what I thought we'd start with again here for the comparison, and this is a tricky one because it's just an iteration of this book, right? This is the original, and this is literally the reborn version of it. When I do my video that I have planned for probably next week of Fizban's Treasury of Dragons versus the DM's Guild Draconomicon, those are drastically different books produced by different people, so you'll see a very substantial difference. But why don't we go ahead and I'll come over here and pull up the two PDFs and I'll run them here side by side for you. The Reborn here on the left and the original here on the right. So right out the gate, I'll say I very much prefer the front cover of the original over the second one. They both do have bookmarks, which as we know is a big issue of mine, and simple thing you can do to make any kind of PDF document significantly more accessible to folks, especially if they're running it on mobile. So why don't we go ahead, this is even back when Critical Role was still part of Geek and Sundry. So we'll go ahead and head to the table of contents and get a high-level comparison to show the difference here. So right out the gate, I noticed, and again, I didn't fully read through every single section of this book, but I did notice a lot of similarities in a lot of the different aspects, right? And it's funny because there's even a chapter here in the beginning called Tal'Dorei Reborn, which I thought in the original. But you can see it's going to give you a lot of the history. It's a campaign guide, so it's going to give you information about it. But there obviously has been significant updates to the world post the events of Campaign 1, post Campaign 2, and now that they're in Campaign 3, you might see some differences there, right? But if we jump down to character options, because the beginning here is all pretty self-explanatory, the character options, I don't actually think in the new book, I don't believe there is any actual like character options listed. It just talks about the sort of lore and history of those races, no actual crunchy stat blocks. And I think part of that is, one, a lot of them have appeared in Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, and because that technically was printed in a Wizards of the Coast book, I don't know the licensing agreements that Critical Role worked out, but those are owned by Wizards of the Coast. So, like the different kinds of Dragonborn, right? Draconian Dragonborn and whatnot, they are now part of a WotC property, so I don't know if they can actually use those anymore. But you'll see there's a difference here because these races did exist here back in the original book. But if we go to the classes, there is significantly more. So we can see we had originally the Blood Domain Cleric, the Path of the Juggernaut Barbarian, the Rune Child Sorcerer, and the Way of the Cobalt Soul Monk. We have more here now, right? We still have the Juggernaut, we have the Tragedy Bard, Blood Domain Cleric, Moon Domain Cleric, a Blighted Druid, which is very exciting. I have often professed my interest in a Blighter style cleric. Cobalt Soul once again, the Path of the Open Sea Paladin, which is available at least in its original iteration on D&D Beyond, and again the Rune Child Sorcerer and a Blood Magic Wizard. So more there to go through, take a look. I'll also say that as we saw, the Cobalt Soul went through many iterations that Matt kind of soft published on Twitter. We'll see how he ultimately ended up with the final version. There was a lot of changes there as time went on, game balance and things changed. So we'll see how that goes. For those of you wondering about things like the Blood Hunter, that's published on the DM's Guild. And when you publish something there, that is now property of One Bookshelf and by proxy Wizards of the Coast. So that's why that's not in this book. We have some backgrounds here. We have class member, Lyceum student, Ashari, Covered Cultist, and Fate Touched. It does appear that all of those they now have the Whitestone Rifle Corps, which did not exist at the time of publishing the original book because of the status of Campaign 1. Supernatural Blessing, Fate Touched was a background, has now been adjusted to be a Supernatural Blessing, which is more in line with what it actually should be. And then the feats. I don't know how many feats there are, but there's a lot of stuff that was used in Campaign 1 that they turned into feats, like the drinking a potion as a bonus action, and their alternative rules for casting spells. Then it has other, campaign rules, and then we have, allies and adversaries was a very short list here, and it's obviously significantly more here, including stats at the end for Vox Machina. So let's go ahead and jump ahead to the races. But it says, among them are legendary heroes Vox Machina, Chapter 6, right? Some 20 years after the conclusion of their greatest adventures. So this was, again, the original version was written during the course of Campaign 1. Campaign 1 had not ended. And then this version, because I remember it came out, the physical book, I picked this up at Gen Con, where I went to a live show of Critical Role, and it was obviously still in full swing. And this is obviously now taking place after 20 years after the end of Campaign 1. So you'll see that's why some of those things like the Rifle Corps of Whitestone is a thing, because that happened in the 20 years post. All right, so let's jump ahead to the races and see if we actually have any stats for any races in this book. I don't believe we do. Okay. This section is a resource for you to use to inspire your character's backstory or to inspire NPCs if you're a game master. Whether you're learning, leaning into fantasy archetypes, intentionally breaking them or ignoring them, the game statistics for each of these races of Tal'Dorei are identical to those in the 5th edition rules. Because, again, I'm thinking they were published. So if we jump to the character options in the original book, let's find the races here. Races of Tal'Dorei. So they didn't obviously publish anything in the original version here. I realize my camera's probably covering a large portion of it. But they didn't have, unless they were something new, they didn't add any stats. So far we're pretty standard across the board here. But we did have references to the Dragonborn. We have Draconians and Ravenites. And you can see right here they had stat blocks, which says increase your Constitution score by 1, your Wisdom score by 1, resistance to non-magical slashing damage, and your base walking speed is 35 feet. That was the Ravenite clans. which basically they're saying the Draconians are traditional Dragonborn and Ravenites would have this adjustment. And again, those two appeared as Dragonborn variants in Explorer's Guide to Wildemount. So if we were to go ahead and look over here, we'd see it's actually the same art from the original book. There is only purely cultural and historical information, lore about these races, nothing to do with any statistics. So if you were looking for something like that, you'll have to reference the original 5th edition rules, or again, Explorer's Guide to Wildemount, or what have you. But as we've seen, you know, with this book, Morton Kane's Monsters of the Multiverse, there's adjustments to the way they're handling races anyway, so it's kind of all up in the air. And who knows, Matt maybe had inside information that they were kind of going to change the way monsters and races were handled, so he could bake that into the book ahead of time. And I say Matt, but Matt and team as well. And then this basically is going to roll right into the new classes. And like I said, this video would become a monster if I was going to go through and compare the existing subclasses that were covered in the original book and compare them to the new book. I mean, ultimately what I'm going to tell you is if you're a fan of Critical Role and you wanted to get one of these books, I believe the original Tal'Dorei campaign setting is out of print now and is not accessible other than like picking it up on eBay or through some third-party seller. Get the campaign guide reborn. It's going to have everything you wanted, and then it's updated and newer. But if we go ahead and we'll skip ahead to, let's go ahead and take a look at the feats. We'll just kind of get an idea of, because we already know from the table of contents that there is more subclasses. Let's jump ahead to the feats and see if any were added or removed, because that might potentially be a determining factor for you. So Cruel is still here. Again, if you want a video where I do a direct comparison, we can do that. There was one originally called Dual Focused, which was, again, a product of Campaign 1, where people were allowed to concentrate or cast 2 spells in a turn. You could maintain concentration on 2 spells. That was, okay, maybe that was a different one, but that was allowed you to maintain concentration on multiple spells at the same time. Flash Recall is still available. There was one here called Gambler, which is not in this one. Mending Affinity, which also didn't make its way over, which is basically just kind of like a healer. Mystic Conflux did appear, although it does appear to be changed. This was the feat that allowed you to attune to more than 3 magical items at a time. Obviously, we've seen that adjusted in the Artificer. It has that as an inborn ability. But I actually do like, just from a quick glance, the adjustments that they made here. A lot of people have incorporated feats like this in their game, and I do agree that it's a good idea, because more often than not, most like magic items that you'd want to attune to another one will give you kind of the effects of a feat, if not more so. Rapid Drinker was one that was kind of to give you the ability to drink a potion as a bonus action. And then we now have Remarkable Recovery, which looks like an adjustment to sort of the Mending Affinity, and we still have Spell Driver, which looks to be roughly the same. This was originally it was you're no longer limited if you cast a bonus action spell. You're no longer limited to only 1 non-cantrip spell per turn. You can cast 2 or more spells in a single turn as long as one of them is 3rd level or lower. And that was originally had a restriction of character level 8 or higher that has been bumped up to character level 11 or higher. And the language has been clarified a little bit to be more in line, right? When you use your bonus action to cast a spell of 1st level or higher, you can also use your action to cast another spell of 1st level or higher. However, if you cast 2 or more spells in a single turn, only one of them can be 3rd level or higher. I think that actually might be original as there as well. So that could, potentially cast, Healing Word and Cure Wounds or something like that. And then they also dropped Throne Arms Master, I think because of the adjustments to the way new fighting styles and things have arisen, that Throne Arm Master no longer has a place. No, I lied. Spoke too soon. I just didn't scroll down far enough. The art threw me off here. So Throne Arm Master, and then we also have Vital Sacrifice as well, which is again a Hemocraft Blood Magic style feat, which is very cool. And then if we go on, I think the next thing that I'm going to cover will be, we do have magic items, which I believe in the original we only had the Vestiges of the Divergence. I don't think we had just generic magic items. And if you read in the little pre-section here about magic items, it says that a lot of these have appeared, at least in the newer version here, rather, have appeared within Critical Role. However, some of the magic items here are entirely new to this book. Like I said, as I was scrolling through, I recognized the names of some of these, or the abilities of some of them from being in the games. And I can see we've got a handful here. It's about a half a page, another full page here, a second, or third page, fourth page. So about 3 or 4 pages or so of just generic magic items for you to use within your campaign, whether it be Critical Role or not. Then we have a section here about the various tools of the Ashari, right? The Ashari are very, they're like, I don't want to call them nomadic, but they're, in touch with nature, druidic people. So there are a lot of sort of nature-based kind of implements for them to use and harness the elements and whatnot. So we have the Earth Board here, which is basically like a surfboard, but just made out of earth. A Flame Friend Lantern. We have an Oceanic Weapon, and you can kind of see right here a Sky Sail. And then we move into the Vestiges of the Divergence, and as you can see, it uses the exact same art that was used in the original book. Obviously showing off the members of Vox Machina, which makes sense storyline-wise. Star Razor, Campaign 2 fans, was not covered in the original one, but it is listed here. If we continue on, then we have the Titanstone Knuckles. We have the Wraps of Diamac, I think, and then we have Whisper. And that should be all. Yeah, that's all of the Vestiges of Divergence. And then we have the optional campaign rules and guidelines about accelerated resting. And this is something that was made, was definitely utilized in Campaign 1, where they sort of expedited the resting system. As you can see it here, have 10 minutes to spare, let them take a 10-minute short rest. If they have a half an hour to spare, let them take a short rest in 30 minutes. This fits the game mechanics to the story's narrative rather than the other way around. In a campaign that implements this option, character must finish a long rest before they can take an accelerated short rest again. So it's an interesting concept to basically don't force, let the narrative sort of things kind of happen naturally there. And probably one of the most popular things I would say is the alternative resurrection rules. This is something that's garnered a lot of, a lot of very impactful moments in Critical Role, but also helps to resolve one of my biggest complaints with 5th edition is that death doesn't seem permanent. And, to an extent, it kind of has always been like that in Dungeons & Dragons, so it's not necessarily just 5th edition. But the way it feels to me is at a certain point, death becomes more of an inconvenience than it becomes a sort of scary thing. If you have a cleric in the party, someone with resurrection or life-restoring magic, and they have the diamonds and access to revivify, and no one is completely, outright, they're able to get to someone, you can die. I had a party member die twice in one day, but due to Revivify, it was basically, again, just a minor inconvenience and some gold expenditure, and they were back in the fight. This Harrowing Return, this didn't exist before, though, where we have this sort of what happens if you come back, and then it can kind of provide an additional adjustment to that. And then we kind of roll right into the bestiary, or bestiary, however you choose to pronounce it. New creatures. Okay. So, all right. So it basically is just going to get us here. It's going to roll right into the Ashari, and different Ashari. Again, I've mentioned the 4 elements. Here we have an Adranok, sort of a winged feline construct here, which if we scroll down does have its own unique stat block, as we can see. And it does, at least we'll have to see if we scroll through here, if these have been updated to the sort of modern canon monsters of the multiverse stat blocks, or if these are similar to the kind of old school version of stat blocks. Again, these are new, and we can see a little bit of a comparison for size. And then again, a little sidebar on how to customize them. Oh, and then here's a master version. Again, we have the Ashari. It looks like it is the same as the old school version of stat blocks, not post Modern Kingdom Monsters of the Multiverse, where spellcasting is part of the stat block. So we'll scroll through there past all of the Ashari. We'll get through all of those. We'll get to a Cinder Slag Elemental. I believe those are in this one. Yes, they are. Same art, just flipped, mirrored. Although a significant improvement in challenge rating from a challenge rating 5 originally to a challenge rating 8, and it does look like they have additional abilities there. We have Clasp agents as well here. This is sort of like a major thieves guild of the world of Tal'Dorei. Okay, we can Clasp. We have a Cold Snap Spirit here, another ice-based elemental. This is new to the new book, not in the original. Here's our Cyclops Stormcaller. Looks to be roughly the same. We have a Demon Feed Spider. Was not there originally. This thing looks amazing. A Fiend, challenge rating 8. A lot of interesting abilities there. And then a Spiderling as well. We also have the Ember Rock. This was a big favorite, and I believe there's a mini coming out of this, which is pretty exciting, made by WizKids. Then we have actually golems as well, several different golem options, a Cobalt Golem, a Forge Golem, a Mage Hunter Golem, which is very cool, and a Platinum Golem. And then we haven't even gotten to Goliaths yet. Or maybe we're going to skip Goliaths, probably entirely is going to be my guess. There's the Craghammer Goat Knights. We'll wait on those. So we have Joriel I know how to pronounce that. Cadogeist. Again, a challenge rating 15 drow here. Now here we go, the Craghammer Goat Knights. So we're catching up. Magma Land Shark. This thing looks amazing. This is basically a lava-based bullet. It is not, unfortunately, in the original book, but it is here in the new one. And a younger version as well, and a Plains Cow as well. We have the Ravagers, which is where we are now. Ravager Slaughter Lord. To be roughly the same. I like the Ravager Stabby Stabber. Got a little bit of a challenge rating increase. We have Revenants. We have a Revenant Chosen and a Revenant Cultist. Again, spellcasters. Rivermaw Warriors. Here's our Goliaths redone here, called Rivermaw Warriors. And then we're at the end of the original book. We have different skeletons here, centaur skeletons and flaming skeletons on fire. Skyrus Serpent Folk, which are basically a specific version of like the Yuan-Ti. And we can have ghosts and regular serpent folk. A Wraithroot Tree, which looks awesome. And then the big, again, as we roll into Vox Machina having their animated series become publicly available, having stat blocks for all of the heroes of Vox Machina is pretty awesome. I might make, like I said, if you guys want, I will make separate videos kind of detailing, one, if there's a comparison, like with some of the subclasses, I could do that. And then I'd also be interested to see if the Vestiges of Divergence have any differences or drastic differences between the original and the new version. And then again, standalone videos, we want to talk about the new classes. And then I think I might make a standalone video where we just look at Vox Machina stat blocks here. And then the index. So there you go. Also, can we talk about how it has an index, which is a beautiful thing that, like, other than the core rulebooks, Wizards of the Coast doesn't do, and it drives me up a freaking wall if I want to quick reference something, and I don't have a PDF version, I have to manually flip through the pages and try to find it, whereas this actually has a full-blown index. Also, an index of artists, which is another nice little thing to see here, showing off who was involved in what, and then obviously we have our open game license information, along with a map. Now, let's go ahead and we'll come back out of the PDFs here. I will say that the updated version here does include in a nice little cute front pocket here, which is nice. It looks like to be a map. So let's go ahead and open this. Showcase this. So we do have a map of Tal'Dorei. I gotta tell you, that little pocket idea is amazing. Because the amount of times that I've ripped trying to pull out like a perforated map out of the back of a book, and you tear and you rip it. This little pocket, genius. It also comes with, get to it, a ribbon bookmark. Again, a very simple little touch that goes a long way in my book as far as convenience is concerned. So again, I'm a fan of that. Well, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of the art chosen for the cover compared to the original, which I do very much enjoy. This one did also have, again, a map in the back. I guess maybe it was just stuck in the back. Yeah, with some like sticky tack. So yeah, it was. So that, again, this also good, didn't involve the perforations. No bookmark though, but like I said, I'm a sucker for that art. And also, if you happen to get it at certain conventions, they actually had a little sticker you could put on the front to add Scanlan into this. The whole thought process of the front cover was this was from Scanlan's perspective watching this happen, but they made a little sticker you could put on like right there to add him in if you wanted. I think there was 2 different versions of that as well. But all in all, this feels, I don't know, I do think it's worthy. I think they were MSRP the same price. This was $35 was the original MSRP for the Tal'Dorei Campaign Setting version 1, and version 2, the Reborn, is $49.95. But I do feel like you are getting, an extra $15 worth of material in here. Again, it's an extra full 100 pages. The book overall just feels more polished, I guess I would say. You have, again, this little pocket is a nice touch. The fact that there can be artwork for everything you'd like to have artwork for. One of my biggest complaints about Wizards of the Coast stuff is whenever we see a cool magic item appear in some book and we don't have art to depict what the magic item is. For example, we have, I think, art for every single vestige of Divergence, and I'm not sure we had that in the original off the top of my head. But just more and updated artwork, as well as keeping a lot of the original artwork as callbacks to the original book, was a nice touch. And again, you've got things like stat blocks for some of the most memorable characters, the entire party, essentially, from Campaign 1. And if this does well, for those of you who joined later, haven't gone back, or maybe don't have any interest in Campaign 1 at all, we might see, if this does well, which I'm sure it already has, reprisals of different, like maybe we'll get a Wildmount. I know we have the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, the official WotC product, but maybe Darrington Press will produce other books that will cover and have stat blocks for, say, the Mighty Nine, or the other, whatever the Campaign 3 group is called at a later date. So you'll have stat blocks for them as well if you'd like to include them. And I also do like that this book is basically 20 years post Campaign 1, where, like I said, this was written kind of during the run of Campaign 1, so you can actually see the changes in the lore between the 2 books. And you'll also see, again, the changes in the game balance and things like that as Matt and the team and everyone have kind of progressed. The game has changed. It's gotten more comfortable with everybody. Adjustments were made accordingly to make those creatures. Again, we saw like challenge rating, just flat out buffs for some abilities and some creatures to make them more in line with, the threat that they were supposed to be. So anyway, I hope this is this kind of gets the point across as to the comparison between the 2 books. Like I said, if you're interested in seeing more about this specifically, covering specific parts, leave a comment down below. Let me know what that is. Thank you again to my patrons over on Patreon for continuing to support me and the channel. And I will see you all next time.